Hey everyone, and welcome to the Pearls of Wisdom podcast. I'm Peter Williams, and I'm joined by my lovely guest, Triona Sheeran, who's joining us live from Dublin in Ireland. She is an absolutely awesome and beautiful soul. Like I've said in my introduction, her positivity and optimism is second to none that I have seen, considering everything that she's been through. But Triona is joining us today to talk us through past lives and, of course, with hypnotherapy. Triona is a qualified QHHT, so that's Quantum Healing Hypnosis Therapist, and she'll talk us through that in a second. But also, just to note, she doesn't quite say it very often, but she's also a very talented and good psychic medium herself, but also, like myself, probably a spirit junkie in many other ways of like we just cannot absorb enough information about this world, and, connecting with us and ourselves and the soul and the spirit world in itself. So thank you so much for joining us, Triona. Appreciate you having here and taking time to speak with us this evening.
Thank you. Really appreciate your time, Peter. You're a busy man, and so lovely connecting in this way and connecting with all of your members and with Facebook. So thank you. It's absolutely, honestly, it's a real privilege. I could talk about this all day.
And look, we've already had many discussions, but I have to say it's so wonderful to have you here, kind of like in that little bit more formal sense. So because you are and you have a wealth of knowledge in this field that far surpasses mine. I've only just hit the tip of the iceberg, whereas you've been actively digging much deeper with this stuff for a number of years. But just for the uninitiated, let's just walk us through, like obviously QHHT, tell us what exactly is that, and obviously how did you find your way here into this? Because as you quickly mentioned before we jumped on, you're saying you worked in the IT field and now you're into this field. So give us a quick background on how that has happened.
I actually studied science. That's my origin in this lifetime, but in the past, in this lifetime, science. And then I went on to do computing science, and then I was an IT manager through Dell computers, so forth. And then eventually I worked up to be IT manager for Ryanair Hotels, actually, which was super duper busy company. So I'll be really honest, half of me is completely logical and linear and scientific, and it always has to be analysis, and it always has to be make sense to me. So that's my own block, which I always need to balance. And then the other half of me is I always was spirit, the little girl. I was always probably too psychic for my own good, and so this argument of the logicalness and prove it, Trina, prove it, to the spiritual side of, but I feel it, has always been at war with me, actually. And it's only up until about 5.5 years ago that I said, I need to embrace this. I need to embrace this side of me. It was actually making me physically sick. Fighting it for
Wow.
so long was making me physically sick. As we all know, this concept of metaphysics, where our mind, our subconscious, our higher self is always going to let us know when we're on the wrong track. And boy, did they let me know. So I went to renal failure, actually kidney failure. Gosh, how long ago now? 15, nearly 16 years ago, 15 years ago,
Okay.
for no reason whatsoever. They don't actually know why. I just went into renal failure. And that's really, I suppose, when I started my journey into myself, my more spiritual journey.
Hmm.
And every time I go off track, they will let me know. Every time. And I know people will resonate with that, who's listening, that every time you go off track, your
Yeah.
guides will let you know, or your subconscious will let you know in the body. That's it. Sometimes it's like punch, and other times it's just like a little trickle. Um, so yeah. So at the moment, I have this connection with my subconscious where if I go a little bit off track, they let me know with my feet, the left and the right ones. I'm just like, okay. I know a friend, they let her know by the car every time she goes off track. Somebody whacks into her car, crashes into her car. She's
I
on
can
Carnival
say that
Park.
I'm happy I don't have that one. Okay.
I'm happy too. I don't have that one, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all about really listening to your gut, listening to your guides, connecting in just to that space. We all have it. We're all psychic. We're all mediums. That's what I believe. We all have that intrinsic knowledge within us. Like
Yeah.
we're not born and then they just drop us and say, off you go. We're not going to give you any guidance. You're on your own here. It just doesn't work that way. But consciously we can ignore everything that's going on. So that's my background, is science actually, and then IT, and then
See, I love that because that's exactly
great.
where I've come from. It's the science background, the analytical, the logical. That's why obviously we just clicked when we did meet, and it's just like, talking about those things and needing to. How does this fit in? This needs to be fit into an order, but it's like we're dealing with the intangible, but finding some level of belief and structure and understanding with it. So it's an amazing thing. So you've come. That's the lead in, and you've kind of now found your way with and I think it's like a big part of your calling, so to speak, is around obviously this quantum healing and therapy. So explain us like what has brought this on and where does this take you?
So actually, just my passion is really about the afterlife, or not so much like not focusing on when I die, focusing on what can I get now in this life from all that realm and all that, that what we don't see with our eyes every day, I suppose. So even though I don't really like the term afterlife, it describes it quite well for people. So my passion is about accessing that knowledge, that wisdom, that healing, that energy now in this lifetime, not just for me but for everybody, because there's a wealth of information there. So that led me into the concept of past lives, future lives, regression, life between lives, mediumship, meditating, everything. So even though it seems that I can be a little bit I like to study, like to kind of all these different modalities. Actually, there's a common thread with everything, and that's connecting to that beautiful energy, the connecting to our guides and connecting to all of that. So that's really my passion. So I'm a regression therapist. I'm a clinical therapist as well. So I study psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. Sometimes I personally have to study a lot of the wrong things in order to realize the right things. So regression therapy is more about current life regression, past life regression. But I did study this modality called QHHT, Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And again, that is regression. And this is primarily what I focus on now. And it was by the late and lovely Dolores Cannon, 19 published books, died in 2014. So it's really super incredible. And what quantum healing is about is using hypnosis, using hypnotherapy. You're guided, or the person's guided, to the place that they need the answers to. So you're not limited to a past life or a current life or a future life. So what I'm getting is about 40% of people go to other planetary systems, go to wherever and ever, wherever and then ever. And a person, a lot of people recently are going to like these healing places that can't even be described, like places of color, places of crystal, where they're even levitating off the bed. So I can't tell you how many light bulbs I've replaced in the room. The energy is so strong.
Well, it's funny you talk about the energy because, like, I've done a few of these and I've never had it where my computer screen is constantly flickering. So it's just like, and I'm like, oh, okay. It's like I'm thinking, please hold the connection. I don't want to lose the connection. So I'm kindly putting out there saying, please don't ruin the connection. I want it to hold and I want this recording to be okay. But that said, I think from your past experience and then from what I know as well, I wouldn't be surprised if this recording doesn't work out for whatever reason, because sometimes the energy is just really, really intense. And I suppose, with everything that you're bringing through and our energies combined, it might not work. So for those who are watching live, you might be very lucky enough to receive this information, but we'll see how it goes. I'll only know once it's finished, but fingers crossed, Spirit will be nice enough to have us to hang on to this connection and kind of see it through. But it's amazing, like I said, and that's why I kind of briefed everybody, like, this world that you're in, it's expansive, like it's a rabbit warren. It's honestly, it's so exciting, and I really would love to, tell everybody and pick your brain and help everybody about with everything, past lives, future lives we've got in between, and we'll kind of touch briefly on that. I just want to kind of work on one thing, otherwise we will, we could be here for hours, which, hey, you and I both have no problem with that, but I'm pretty sure everybody else will be in bed. So it'll be fine. So, but let's just have a look at something that obviously is quite familiar to a lot of people, and it's kind of great because it has gained a lot more recognition over like the last 20 years or so. And the great thing is spirituality in itself is great, getting a lot more recognition, becoming a lot more mainstream, through, mass media like television and stuff like that. But one thing is past lives, and it has, kind of started to get more and more kind of understanding and information. So, but when we talk about past lives, just again, for those who are not quite sure, and this might be their first time going, you know what, I've heard this term before. What does this exactly mean? So, in your best kind of summation, how would you describe this past life thing to someone if they've never heard it before?
So a past life is literally what it is. It's lives that you've lived before this current life, one that you're in. Some people will ask, have I perhaps not incarnated before? Yes, I have had people who've never incarnated before. So it's basically the life you have lived before this one.
Okay.
And really, that's simple.
So this is obviously understanding past life, as you say, mentioned there with the incarnation side of things. So to have this connection to past lives, we have to work with the belief system of reincarnation. That meaning we have one lifetime. Obviously, we finish that lifetime, we pass, and then of course have another lifetime. Is that correct?
Well, you don't need the belief system because it just is.
I'm working with the other minds who just might be.
I know, right? But like I had a gentleman in who didn't believe, he was completely agnostic. I mean, he's even looking at my Buddha figure going, and he naturally regressed to a past life. So we said, go to the source of that trauma that you're feeling right now. And he went to a past life and he couldn't understand it. He was a pregnant woman in like Rome and he was just freaking out, go, what the hell is going on? So he was absolutely converted after that. So that's what I mean. You don't need to believe in it for it to be true, because the subconscious controls 90% of everything we do, see, feel, anything physical in the body is all the subconscious. So the subconscious is in control, and that believes in past lives.
And that's what I made. See, this is what I love about it. So that science is we've got this like now with more, information and evidence to kind of back this up. And of course, there's nothing better. Like, you've also received it on having with clients and having like that gentleman who's completely agnostic kind of, way kind of come out of it and go, there's something in it. Of course, even for me, there's, through the mediumship side of things, it's always wonderful connecting with someone who's, whether they're an atheist or agnostic, and all of a sudden you're just bringing through enough information about a loved one that, of course, we have no idea about, and they're going, there's no way you could know that. So it's nice to bring that through and have that. But that brings in, we kind of touched on a little bit before, but there's always the interesting question. Again, I'm coming very much from the perspective, just in case anybody's new to this. It's the whole point of like, we're saying here, okay, we've got past lives. And of course, we've got this life. Then if we've got this one, that one, another one, what's happening in between? What happens, like we've got all these different lives, but obviously, like, do we just kind of do a flip of the switch and away we go and we rack these up, or what happens in between?
Oh, wow. So basically, you're going to get different ideas on this, but as both a medium who channels and also for somebody who's facilitated over 2,600 life between regression sessions, this is my understanding. It's never a flip of the switch. It takes about 100 of our years in spirit to prepare for the next life. Oh, wow. It's so intensive. We have a review. So in spirit, after we die, we have a review of this lifetime. We have physical and emotional healing of any trauma or thoughts that we've been to. We have, of course, our beautiful reunion of our loved ones and our guides. We tend to have working groups. So we tend to go to the place where, did you get your work done? Did you fill it? No, why not?
That was mine. Oh, I'll
Lovely.
never forget that.
Oh,
Like, did you get it done? Did you get it done? I'm like, really? Is that what we're going to talk about? Out of all things, we're going to talk about, did you get it done?
I know, right? And that all my life between life sessions that I do, they're always like that, and it's just like, I know, here comes the lecture. And then when we're ready, we prepare for the next incarnation. But really, when we're incarnating, it's either about continuing to grow, evolve on a soul level, or it's about helping other people, or it's about helping ourselves. But there's more and more and more people incarnating to help the planet, to help the earth, to help all the other planetary systems, to help humans on it. So there's all different reasons why, but it's never a flip of a switch. It's never ever that quick. It's intense. It's long. It's
There's a
Wow, like
process.
complexity. There is always a process. And what's interesting is when people regress to that point of the life between lives, they all follow a similar passion. All of them. Every single one follow a passion. So isn't it really interesting from an analytical point of view that
Mm.
people who've never read a book, never had a session before, and yet they all follow a passion in spirit that they go through.
Yeah,
Really
again, it's amazing in that, and I think that's one of those statistical things. Like, it's like when you have, like you're just saying, there's people from all these different backgrounds and knowledge levels, yet the pattern still exists. So statistically, there's something definitely going on, even on that level itself. So, and it's an amazing thing. So obviously, it's nice to know that it's not flip the switch. There's a process going on. And I know for a fact that I'm going to get badgered, so I'm going to say it right now. With your permission, I'd love to have you back, and we can talk about that side of things in another episode here, because a big passion for both of us, and that will probably be we might even have to have a special Die Hard episode where we can more really just get into the ramblings of it for some Die Hard fans. But jumping back into, and let's have a look at this past life side of things. So now we've established that obviously we've got these lives, we've got these patterns that we're kind of coming through. As you're quickly describing, obviously we've got work that happens and all these type of things. But when we look at past lives, and I remember when I first got interested in this, and I do talk about this in my book, Searching Spirit, a little bit. Very much about kind of like, I remember, it kind of, when it was mentioned, I have to admit, like, I was like, ping, my antennas went up, and I was like, oh, what's this past life thing? And this sounds very interesting. And I was told at the time too, but you've also got to be very, very careful of what you do or who you have assisting you, all this kind of stuff, because, there's some interesting things that can happen back there. So I was kind of told, don't do it unless you really, really have to. So I actually did get out one, but put that aside. But what would be the reason? Why would someone wish to connect to a past life or go and have a look at one?
Oh, wow. Okay. So, well, the most obvious one is that people have carried over trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma. That's the big one. Now, we do have a lot of healing in spirit, but sometimes it can kind of, the best way I can describe it is embed in our auric field or in our DNA. So if you're born into this life with a trauma, you're going to know as a little girl, you're going to know as a little boy. I've always been afraid of the dark. I've always felt claustrophobic. I've always had this fear. So they're ones that you've carried over. Birthmarks, scars that you're born with, they're carried over from a past life. So I have seen physical scars that people have had since the day they were born, gone in one past life session. Gone, because it's an energetic imprint if you think about it. So once the subconscious releases that past life trauma,
Mm-hmm.
it will release in this. So I feel it's important to know that the subconscious doesn't record time. It's not linear. So it doesn't see the past as the past or the future as the future. It just sees all emotion and trauma as now. So it doesn't understand. So in hypnosis or hypnotherapy, when you go back and access that past life trauma, the subconscious feels it in the now, in the present moment, and releases it. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm not being too scientifically boring. So if you think about it, trauma that happened in the past, like to us now, linearly thinking, we understand it's the past. Consciously, we're like, why is that bothering me, right? It's the past. Subconscious doesn't understand it. All it knows is I was betrayed, I was hurt, I am never, ever going to love another person ever again. Or every time I trust somebody, I get stabbed in the back, literally. So now I'm not going to trust anyone again. So all of these thoughts, all of these emotions are now have formed in the subconscious. So that's one big reason why people need to go back and do go back. And that what's really interesting is I don't even need to say go to a past life. I just say go to the trauma, go to the very root of that trauma. And they usually always go to a past life for it, even the agnostics. So it's a bit like pulling a root out from the root, a weed out from the root. That's why it's so important to get it to the root, because you can do an awful lot of therapy in this lifetime, but if it's not getting to that root, good luck. Another reason is, which is actually I really love, is some people can really struggle with what to do. I just don't know. I feel lost. Direction. What am I here for? What's my sole purpose?
Mm-hmm.
And past life regression can answer all of them. That's actually why I had my first past life regression, and that's why I'm doing past lives now. Why am I here? What's my purpose? I just didn't know. So and
It's a
answered it like
massive
that.
one. That's like so many people,
Mm.
especially at this point in time. Like, there's so much of like a reflection of, who we are, what are we supposed to be doing, what do we want from this life, and I suppose like that's why I feel like people get lost. I suppose we don't really, I think a big part of society is missing that connection with that inner self. So that's nice to know that these things can assist with that. Now, just quickly while you're on that, it's interesting here too because it's interesting you mentioned there how like when you get into a session with this, you're kind of like saying like the person and that soul kind of straight to the trauma kind of automatically goes that way in a pattern. And I find that very, very interesting because let's just say, because in my experience, I remember when this happened and I was kind of so interested in the past life thing. It really was. I was like, it was just fascinating. But I was like, I was also kind of a little bit afraid is probably not the right word, but because I was told be careful of going back there and dealing with it, I was a bit more hesitant and a bit more cautious because, of course, I didn't want to, mess anything up, so to speak. But then, when I was kind of like, I'm like, I really want to do this, but I had absolutely no idea why. None. I just wanted to do it. I'm like, I want to try this past life thing. And it's interesting because, so if someone has a feeling like I did with that, would you say, hey, then it's definitely something worth looking for? Is this kind of like a part of ourselves and a part of our soul saying, hey, this is a time to investigate this. It's time for you to have a look at this. Is that what it's kind of, calling us to do?
Sorry, 100%. But you're extremely in tune with your subconscious and your guides and your soul. So for you, it might be kind of easier. So yes, some people say, I just feel drawn to this. I feel like this is the right time for me. But also some people will just come and say, I just feel fear and I don't know why. I just feel this and I don't know why. I don't know why I'm here. So I tend to get more of those kind of questions looking for the past life. But yeah, no, we all have to listen to that gut, gut within us, and that tells us that. And you did mention twice, and I'll just pick up on it. It is, you do need to be careful because I knew some people who've done 2-day courses online for past life regression and so
Yeah.
forth. It just as an example, I've been studying it for 5 years. I did regression therapy for 3 years and QHHT and so forth for 5 years. So it's really important that from a therapy point of view, that if you're looking for that regression therapy, that you go to somebody who's quite qualified. Otherwise, what you're going to have is a journey, which can be 5 different lives, little snippets of different things. So there is different types of past lives as well. I mean, for me, as even a medium and as an evidential medium, it's lovely to prove that life exists after death. But
Yeah.
hearing something is very, very different than feeling something. So in a past life, you will feel it, and you cannot deny them. You cannot deny that life exists after death, because here you are experiencing another life.
You bring up a very good point, and this is a common question, obviously, and it's something that I, after having experienced it myself, because look, I think there was a point where probably before I had a regression, sometimes I'd probably go for a reading or something like that, and the reader might mention something about my past lives, and of course it was kind of intriguing and interesting, but it was almost like it was just kind of a little bit airy fairy because I couldn't grab onto it. There was nothing, so I was like, okay, that's kind of exciting. Oh, and I had to kind of wrestle myself with it. But it was very interesting jumping into the regression itself, like you're saying. And I say to clients now, if you want anything about your past life, I suggest you go and look at it yourself. But this brings up the really important question because, I'll kind of go on a little bit of a tangent here with a couple of questions, and we'll work our way through it, and I'll kind of loop back around here. But when we have a look at it, so obviously regression is one way, but are there other ways for someone to have access or to connect with the past lives besides therapy?
100%. So actually the subconscious memories are all on the peripheral of the hemisphere, which means they're the easiest things to access. That's why that's why past life regression is so easy to access. The transformation might be hard, but the accessing it. So dreams, we all access past lives in our dreams, lucid dreams, but that sense of deja vu. And when you meet somebody and you just know, I've met this person before. Some clients have explained that they've gone into, say, Egypt, where they've never ever been before, and that they've been able to navigate being able to tell that shop used to be over there. I know that person used to work there. Spontaneous regression in children as well is like super amazing, where they spontaneously regress. So the younger we are, the stronger those past life memories are as well. So spontaneous regression in children, as I just mentioned, deja vu, that sense of connecting, that soul connection that we have with people. But actually also gifts. We're all born with gifts, but these gifts aren't given to us in spirit. These gifts are actually, how can I describe? They're archetypes. They're developed over many, many lifetimes. So if you're a medium in many, many lifetimes, you're naturally going to be a very good medium here. If you're an artist or a healer or a doctor in many, many different lifetimes, you're naturally going to have all those abilities here. Like, they're not just created accidentally, So we all can connect to past life memories. We can connect with that energy of a past life, the fears, the phobias, just spontaneously. We don't need a regression to do that.
Okay, so well, that's amazing. Look, and I know I've had a few of those myself. I can probably tick all those boxes, to be quite frankly. And I think the one that really got me, and it's interesting you mentioned this, that spontaneous past life regression that actually happened during a healing session. I was completely conscious. I wasn't even had my eyes closed, and I just recalled a very, very significant thing in southern France, and I've never been to France. And after I expressed it, I think it was a week later, and I went to a group and I explained what had happened. This lady's like, I know exactly what you're talking about because I was just there 3 weeks ago, and you've described that landscape to an absolute T. She goes, I know the bridge that you're talking about. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's very interesting. But it's interesting too, because like I said, kind of coming back to the point, because you said it's really important. I say to people, if you have this or you want to delve into this, it's important to do it for yourself because you get to feel it. Because the big question that remains, like whether we have like deja vu is a nice sense, but if we're having like a spontaneous one, or maybe we're in our dreams, the big question kind of comes like, if we're having these experiences or we're having these recollections by ourselves without a therapist, how do we really know it's a recollection or a past life versus our imagination? How is there some way we can break that down so people can kind of go, oh, thank you, now I know it's not my imagination? Is some kind of breakdown here we can pull that apart?
Ish. I get so many people saying, am I imagining this? Am I imagining this? How can I prove it? So I'll kind of answer in two parts. One, I don't think we can ever truly prove it, can we, really? However, do you need to prove it? You've just had an experience. You've just been given some visuals, and you're given it for a reason. Just like in meditation, if you're connecting with the guides or connecting, with the universe or the planet, you've had an experience, and that experience is so valid that's going to answer questions for your current life and what you might be going through. So it doesn't really matter if it's real or not real. However, how I'll answer again is that the subconscious is all imagination. Anything in the imagination is all the subconscious mind, not the conscious mind. Anything from the subconscious is so vitally important because, as I said, it controls 90% of everything we do, think, say, everything in the body, or the unconscious body, which is the physical body. So if you're imagining it, that's a subconscious. Bada bing. It's so vitally important. There are a few cases. I'll just give you one example of a client, and she was in a past life. She was in a home that was about 250 years old, and it's currently in Ireland, her uncle's home that still exists to this day. But in this past life, it was her own home. She was quite well to do. She fell in love with the stable boy. He gave her this beautiful gold necklace. She was hiding it from her parents, and she hid it in a floorboard in that past life. And then he died, and her parents shipped her off to be a nun or something like that. Very Irish. And then she went home, and she was like, I just wonder. She went to her uncle's house, and with permission, 250 years later, which is the now, she went up to the floorboard, and guess what? The necklace was in the floorboard, the same necklace. She brought it to what you call them, like an auctioneer, antique dealer, and they said, this is impeccable. This is at least 200 years old, and yet it's like new, and got an official valuation and stuff on it. So how incredible is that? How incredible is that?
And it's stories like that. You can't make that up. You
No,
honestly
you
can't.
can't. And I'm not a very imaginative or artistic or creative person, to be honest. So for me, it's really, really easy because when I'm connecting into this past life, I just can't imagine it. I just couldn't possibly imagine the stuff that could come up. So, but also really it's the feeling, and this is what I try to get people to focus on. Did you feel different? That emotion that starts bubbling up in a past life, or even the glimpses, as you said, that spontaneous regression in the healing. You just can't imagine that emotion. It's real, it's tangent, you can touch it, you can feel it.
And it kind of comes from there. And I think the one thing that I always try to describe is that when you're going through it, that whole feeling of like it's just there. Like it's as if it's very similar to recalling a memory versus trying to tell a story that you're making up as you go along. Because I find
Exactly.
I'm a very visual person. I'm very very clairvoyant in that space. But I know when I have it, it's just bam, it's right there. The details there. But I couldn't possibly make that up as I go. And of course, those emotions that kind of come along. Good luck trying to tell a story or make up a story with emotion because it's very hard to implant as you kind of go along. So then that's the tangible
That's
thing.
it.
So ultimately, the best way to really tell is it's there. Look for those feelings, pay attention to those things because you're saying that the subconscious is really trying to show us.
Exactly. It shows us all, subconscious shows us all these different times. So people can come to a regression because they have an unexplained, medically speaking, physical symptom in the body and they want to know what's going on. Sometimes they want the experience, but other times it's because they're carrying over this trauma. So um really doesn't matter. Do we always need to scientifically and consciously analyze everything? Okay, I'm answering yes, but do we really?
I was going to say, are you actually genuinely asking about that question? Because my answer
Yeah,
would be yes as well.
yeah. But do we really? I don't know if we can ever truly prove past life exists. What I will say though is when you go deep into that emotion, nobody will convince you otherwise that it's not true because you're feeling it, you're seeing it. I One of my past lives I had was some Egyptian son, whatever, but I felt the gold necklace. I felt the male body. Like I felt what it was like to be a man. I could never have felt that otherwise. Could feel the cool air, could smell, the tropical air. One man recently actually regressed and he was a woman with a baby moving and kicking in the tummy and he just started crying and he said, could never even encapsulate how this felt ever. Like you just can't make that up.
And he felt it. He could
Oh,
just.
he was crying and he was so analytical. It was so funny to see him.
I
But
can
yeah, he
see
felt the
you're so
baby.
excited. You're like a kid in a
Yeah,
candy store going, "Oh my
I
god!"
know. The incredible stories, honestly, that come up in past lives is so amazing, And it's convincer when the person goes into that and they feel it, it's convincer. So it's not overly important to see in a past life. It's more important to feel it
Feel it.
because the subconscious is all emotion.
Okay. Well, so that's me. It's just nice to kind of clear because that's why I think, if anybody, after watching this or is interested in that and they go, okay, well, I'm really excited now. I'm definitely going for regression. It's kind of like, it's nice to be able to give them some pointers of what they're looking for and to kind of take out of that. And just on that note, because we're going to get off on a tangent again here in a second because I'm going to pick your brain. But, while just on that, and it was nice because you were talking briefly before about, it's important to have a look at the qualifications because, as we know, it's the day and age. There's a lot of like, as we call them, weekend warriors who go off and do these courses and think, oh, hey, how I can do this. And of course, you've educated on, what you should. So just very quickly, if anybody's interested in doing this, what should they look for in a regression? Like, what they should look for, and what should they be looking, or what could they experience from an actual regression?
So the very first thing I'd look at is how many sessions they've done. So if they've
Okay.
done like 50 or 100, honestly, well, just personally, I wouldn't. How long have they been doing it? Yes, but more so, how many do they work full time, part time in it? They need to be by a reputable training body. So EARTH is a really, really important one. They recommend various different training bodies around the world. So if they're
Okay, around
registered
the
on
world.
that,
Yep.
that's a really good sign.
So what was that one again?
Um,
Just very quickly, how do you? What are the initials for that? The abbreviation?
EA or TH, Earth.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's another important one. I always like to think that they should be a hypnotherapist, to be honest. I do. Like, why go to somebody who's not a hypnotherapist? So they could be a hypnotist. That's different than a hypnotherapist. And, really, though, it's their own gut. Their subconscious and their guides are going to lead them to the right person. So do your research. It's like, I wouldn't even go to, geez, I do my research. I wouldn't even go to a coffee place without researching what coffee they're doing, and is it nice? Is it not nice? The mind to hold. For the quantum healing hypnosis technique, there's different levels, 1, 2, and 3. I'm a level 3 at the moment. And what that means is it doesn't really matter, but it does matter that speak to them, how so it is a difference in having a past life journey and having a past life therapy. So are they a regression therapist? That's a good one. It took me 2 years to get my regression therapy. So intense. So are they a regression therapist? So there are a few little indicators. For example, because I am a therapist, when people come to me even for a journey, good luck with that. They're always going to get I tell you, somebody just said, I just want a journey. And I said, sure, we'll try it. Oh, they went to some background. They went, all this, there's a lot of transformation in there. So you'll be drawn to the person's soul that, this kind of mirroring this image. So energetically, you'll be drawn to the experience that you need at that time. Yeah. But really, just personally, I wouldn't go to anyone who's done a weekend course online and then they're going to be delving into my deepest memories and emotions and moving all my energy around. No, I wouldn't. But same for mediumship or healing or anything.
Well, it's interesting you kind of just mentioned that too. Is like obviously going through that, it can be very transformative. So obviously that means we are delving deep. We can get into that, and that's what I mean. Like going back to the original thing, is there a need to be cautious? If someone's not trained or fully qualified, and you go down this path, is it possible for you to come out worse than before you started?
I should say no. I should say no, because the subconscious is very protective. However, I'll be honest, there is an element. I remember in my training, and it was different because it was training environment. I had a kind of half session, and then before a session, what you'll find is people bubbling. Officially, it's called bubbling, or being triggered. So they're more emotional. Their energetic state is all over the place, and if they have body pain, like if they have a sore wrist that they hadn't had before, I know they're going to go to a past life. The wrist is probably chopped off. So you can feel that energy surging up to a week before the session as the subconscious getting ready to go through it all. So you can be a little bit worse off. Yeah, I would advise caution. However, more than likely, your subconscious will just bring you on a little journey, a nice little positive experience. So it will be a nice experience, but you're not going to transform. You're not going to shift that trauma, that energy.
And I suppose that again, it comes down to if you're looking or seeking one out. You've got to get inside yourself and ask yourself, what am I looking here for? If it's very similar to mine, I didn't know. And it was realistically, I did go on a journey. I saw multiple snippets of different lives, and I had no idea what I was looking for. It was wonderful. I saw many different things, but I did find out the issue. Obviously, what we did go back and have a look at, which was fantastic. So it's interesting talking about that. So, but obviously, with this day and age, everything's online. Is it? I just very quickly too is it safe to do via Zoom? Can you do it online?
Yeah, you can actually. So past life regression, because they're so perfect, like they're so easy to access and they're on the peripheral of the brain. So they are safe to do online with, I'd advise something like a regression therapist, but yeah, they are. However, I would also say that QHHT can't be done online. At this moment anyway, can't be done online. That needs to be done live. And also life between lives I don't recommend people do it online. You're just not going to go deep into that amnesia state or that theta state. So the brain changes different brain waves every single day, like thousands of times a day. So in hypnosis, what you're doing is deliberately changing the brain waves to get to that memory, and then with the intention. So you really, for life between lives and that kind of really, that afterlife experience, you need theta. You need to go all the way down there, and you're not really going to get that, in my opinion or my experience, online. So some can do online, some not online. Also remember that if you've had a very traumatic childhood, it's been quite abusive, quite traumatic, maybe a lot of loss, you might need that one-to-one energy with somebody.
Yeah.
So again, if you're going to a current life regression, I'm not too sure if it's suitable to do online.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's just very interesting because obviously I think it'll be a
Yeah.
big question on a lot of people's minds because with what's happening and all that kind of stuff. And I also know, look, we're on opposite sides of the world. I'm pretty sure you're going to get inundated with a lot of emails and questions. Like, can you help me out, Trina? I would like a session, which is awesome. But while we're on that point, if someone does want to get a hold of you or even possibly contact you for a session, how are they going to go about doing that?
Thank you, Peter. That's great. And look, I'm really ethical. I'm really honest. So if I can't help you, I recommend somebody who can close by. I turn down, I say, about 3 out of every 9 people. I say, I'm just not for you. But I'm very happy to help. Who is for you? TrionaSheeran.com, my brand new website. So bear with me. It's under work, but TrionaSheeran.com. Facebook page, Triona Sheeran's public page. You can follow that. Lots of free little lives going on there. And Instagram, just Triona Sheeran.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I just want to say thank you so much for your wisdom. If anybody does want to delve deep, and you are so generous with your time, you're so generous with your knowledge and your expertise. So I do recommend that you check her out on her Facebook page because there's always wonderful snippets, experiences, and stuff like that. So it's definitely something there that you can, search for, look for, and ask questions because it's a field of its own. And as you know, as you can cheer yourself, you've done the study, you've done the work. That's why it's always nice to get this information from a reputable source. So please feel free to hit Triona. She's a wonderful professional in this field. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to follow her or ask her more, and she can help you on that front. So just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your time this evening. It's been wonderful to talk with you.
Thanks, Peter. And thank you, everyone, for joining. I really appreciate the time and energy. Thank you.
That's all right. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll have you back, and we've got other things to talk about. So stay tuned for the next episode that we're going to have Triona back because it's a big wide world out there of spirit. And I look forward to connecting with you again soon. So thank you again so much for your time. And I'll see you all again soon for the next Facebook Zoom Power podcast.
Brilliant. Thank you, Peter. Wonderful.
All right. There we go. So